Hello Internet, this is Sam Messman from We Make Movies here, and what I'm going to show you today is how to use Redcine-X Pro to grade your raw footage in Final Cut 10. And as I showed you earlier in my Red Workflow tutorials, Final Cut 10 has built in most of the sliders you would ever need to grade your raw footage. However, there are some additional ones in Redcine-X Pro like curves and manipulating the individual RGB color channels that you simply can't do in Final Cut. So if for any reason you find the Final Cut 10 raw workflow a little limiting, it's a really easy process to go and use Redcine-X Pro and have complete control over your raw workflow and have it update automatically in Final Cut 10. And it's a huge time saver from what we've all been used to using Redcine-X Pro in Final Cut 7. Anyway, there's only two things you'll need for this tutorial, which is some red footage and then also a copy of Redcine-X Pro, which is located at red.com/downloads. So go ahead, download that, install it, and let's go ahead and get started. Now there's only one thing you need to do in order to get all this to work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the general way that you go ahead and import your red footage into Final Cut 10. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that one setting is and how to get all of your red footage to integrate properly with Redcine-X Pro. So let's go ahead and bring in a sample reel of red footage into Final Cut 10 the way you normally would, because I want you to understand the key concepts in how this workflow works. So let's go ahead and right click the hard drive and make a new event, and I'm going to name mine bedstuy_RCX and push return. It's going to make a new event, and now what I want you to do is make a keyword collection and name that keyword collection R3D. And let's go ahead and jump into the Finder and find our red footage. Mine is located on a drive under day 1, and I'm just going to bring in one roll of this footage as this is just going to be a test drive. So I'm importing the footage, I drag it into my keyword collection, and all of my red clips appear. And what I would normally do now is go and open up my Red HUD, and I could grade my red clips there. And the way grading red raw works is that when you make adjustments to your raw settings, it'll make a red metadata file that will show up whenever your red file is used in various applications. So let's go and try and affect some of that in Redcine-X Pro. So open up Redcine-X Pro, and now let's go find that reel of footage and put it into a bin. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look for day 1 and reel 1, and you'll see all these clips. And now I'm going to try and drop these clips into a bin. And they'll all show up here, and let's go ahead and modify the first clip and change a couple of the raw settings and see if those reflect back into Final Cut 10. So I'm just making a drastic change so that it'll be obvious whether or not these changes have gone through. And let's go ahead and jump back into Final Cut 10 now and see whether these changes have been applied to our footage. So we'll go back into Final Cut 10 and let's click A1 Clip 1, and our clip still looks exactly the same. Now why is that? If we affected the red metadata file, it should have been affected when we got into Final Cut 10. And the answer to this is because of the way that Final Cut 10 works with red metadata files. The key is that you need to make metadata files before importing into Final Cut, or your changes won't get reflected, and I'll show you why. If we go into our Final Cut event here, which is called bedstuy_RCX, and then go into the original media, you'll see a clip reference to the original R3D and then a red metadata file that has been created in each one of these instances. And the problem is that when you shoot your red footage, it does not make that red metadata file on its own, which means that if you don't make a RMD file before you import your footage into Final Cut 10, Redcine-X Pro has no idea that Final Cut has manufactured its own RMD, and it's going to make an RMD for the original clip, and those two RMDs will not be living in the same place. So how do we fix this? Well, I've deleted my original event in Final Cut 10, and now we're going to step back into Redcine-X Pro. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this same bin of footage, and it's a really simple step. We're going to select all of these clips, and then we're going to right click on them and select Save RMD. And this is going to save an RMD across this entire reel of footage so that when we import these clips into Final Cut, it will be referencing an RMD that we've already created as opposed to creating one on its own that Redcine-X Pro will not be aware of. So let's go ahead and make a new event, and we're going to do the exact same process, and we're going to bring in all of our original R3Ds that now have the RMD file that we've applied in Final Cut 10. As you can see, there's an RMD now in all of that original media, and we're going to drag that into our event, and it's going to import all of our footage from that one reel. Now, let's go ahead and jump back into Redcine-X Pro. And we already have all of our clips in there, and let's click on the first one, and let's make some adjustments to the raw settings. So I'm going to make a pretty severe adjustment once again, affect the tint, affect the FLUT, so that the change will be drastic when we go back into Final Cut. And that looks pretty drastic. So let's jump in, and as you can see, our raw file has updated automatically. So it's just a matter of making that simple Save RMD step before you import your footage into Final Cut that's going to allow you to have complete control of your raw footage in Final Cut 10 from Redcine-X Pro, and this is pretty awesome. So just remember, before you import, right-click Save RMD across all of your footage before you bring it into Final Cut 10, and you should be good to go from there. Now there's one more thing I'm going to show you, and that's how easy Final Cut makes it for you to affect the raw settings of just the clips you've used in your completed edit. So if you watched my Red workflow tutorial, you saw how to media manage your project so that it's just using your used clips in your new project. And what I've done here is I've made two finished events, that one of which uses clip references back to the original R3D media, and one uses the organize event command that will place all of your original media into the new event and consolidate it for you. And regardless of which you choose to use, which is clip references or the organized event command, it's still a really easy process to go into Redcine-X Pro and only grade the footage that you've used in your edit. And let me show you how that works. So we're back in Redcine-X Pro now, and what we're looking at is the file inspector to go find our red media. And all of that red media is contained in our event's original media folders. And the first example I'm going to show you how to grade your clips that have been done using the organize event command, which means that all of the media used in the project has now been moved into the original media folder. And if we go to the Bed-Stuy online event, and then in the original media folder within that, and we right click it and say open in bin and include subfolders, it will now make a bin within our Redcine-X project that's going to show us all of the clips contained in that one folder, and they're now in a bin, and we can start working on the red metadata on them. And what that means is that with the single click of a button, we are now able to affect the raw in an entire project and not have to export and import an XML or do any of that stuff, because all of our media lives in one folder, so we can now grade it and not waste energy on clips that aren't in our project. And what we'll do next is go ahead and select all of the clips in the bin and right click and click Save RMD once again, just in case we hadn't done it already. And now we can go in and we'll select the first clip, and just as a test, we're going to blow out the FLUT so that it's going to be really recognizable a change has been made when we jump back to Final Cut. And as you can see, it takes a second, but the raw is going to update, and now we are accessing the raw from the clips in our original media folder, and we can do this for our entire project and grade our entire project in Redcine-X Pro. And what's even cooler about this is we don't even need to use the organize event command to make this work. So if we go to our other event, which uses clip references in the original media on another drive, we can do this same process of right-clicking the original media folder and choosing the include subfolders option to make a new bin and then going and grading all of that footage, even though we're just using clip references to the original media on another drive. So let's go ahead and select that bin we just made and select, well, this time we'll use the second clip, and we're going to go make some pretty harsh adjustments to this clip just for our personal reference. And when we're done doing that, let's go step back into Final Cut, and we'll switch over to the second clip in our other event. And as you can see, nothing's been updated. And when you run into this problem, if Final Cut isn't updating your raw footage, there's a quick solution, which is to go into your modified red raw settings and open the HUD, and then go scroll to the bottom and choose Revert to Neutral Values, and then click Cancel. And all this is really doing is getting Final Cut to refresh its RMD settings so that it's referencing the latest version of the raw. If you graded, for example, in Redcine-X and it hasn't quite recognized it. So when that happens, just go in and make a quick adjustment and click Cancel. Don't apply those settings in Final Cut, and it's going to reference the changes you've made in Redcine-X Pro. Anyway, hopefully that's been helpful for you guys, and it's given you an understanding of how RMD files work and how you can use that to your advantage and really take total control over your raw settings, whether it's in Final Cut 10 or using Redcine-X Pro to work with Final Cut 10. So anyway, I hope you guys got something out of this, and it makes your lives as editors and colorists a little bit easier as well. And also, all the steps from this tutorial have been posted in the description below, and if you have any questions or things you notice that you want to add to this workflow, post them in the comment section and I'll try and get back to you. At the end of the day, the goal here is to make all of this stuff as seamless and easy as possible, and I'd love your feedback on how to make it all better. And if you watch this and it all went totally over your head, or you just don't feel like doing it, well, this is what I do for a living, so feel free to hire me either to consult on your movie or to finish your film for you if that's what you need. So if you want to get in touch, just drop me an email over at sam@wemakemovies.org. And lastly, if you're wondering what this whole We Make Movies thing is, check us out over at wemakemovies.org, or if you live in LA or Toronto, sign up for our newsletter and then come to one of our events. I'll see you guys next time.
And cut!